back, you're watching Overdrive. Now, apart from the chassis as well as the feature list, there is yet another department where the siblings are identical, and that's the powertrain. So what edges one over the other? It's time to find out.
Ironically, you cannot have this level of safety in a diesel manual Seltos. You can have it, however, on the GTX Plus line. But if you were to choose a GTX Plus line, it means that you need a diesel automatic. And if you were to choose that, you would also get some additional safety features like the 360-degree camera, the blind spot assistant camera, and also the heads-up display, which I believe is a nice kit to have. However, if you're settling for a diesel manual, well, the Creta offers the better safety kit here. Also, the Creta will get a tire pressure monitoring system as a standard fit across the range. Of course, for the lower end trims, you get a low line system, which means that every wheel well doesn't have an individual tire pressure monitoring. However, with the higher end trims, you get the high line system like the one that we have in this one. It's already showing me that the front right wheel is 1 psi lower than the rest of the three. So that's a nice system to have, because tire pressure is a piece of preventive maintenance that is ignored, that's most commonly ignored. So having a system like this as a standard fit across the range is a nice thing. But if you were to purely compare the Creta versus the Seltos in terms of the features list, in terms of the safety features that it offers, without pricing being a concern, well, the Seltos has the better kit overall. Like the chassis, there's another department where the Korean siblings are almost identical, the powertrain options. The cars seen here use the 1.5-litre turbo diesel that puts out 115 PS of power and 250 Newton meters of torque. This BS6 engine replaces Hyundai's 1.6, 126 PS, 260 Newton meter engine from the previous Creta. And sprightly nature is what we used to love with the 1.6-litre engine in the Creta, right? So does this new engine still do that? Well, despite the drop in power and torque and even displacement, it still maintains those attributes. You will literally have to drive this new engine either in the new Creta or the Seltos and the old 1.6 back to back to be able to notice any difference. And that difference is really marginal. So yeah, it still feels very eager, it still feels very nice whether you're driving in the city, cruising out on the highway. The engine feels nice and torquey. In terms of the numbers generated from our tests, the Creta 1.6 diesel hit the ton from a standstill in 10.9 seconds, whereas the new Creta 1.5 does it in 11.6 seconds, while the Seltos is marginally quicker at 11.2 seconds, yet again proving to be the sportier of the two. Interestingly, a similar marginal advantage in the favor of the Seltos is also observed in the in-gear acceleration for the diesel manual. That said, the engine in the Creta feels a little more relaxed, a little more refined, and cruising at about 100 kilometers an hour on the highway, it needs about 2000 RPM, whereas the Seltos needs a slightly higher engine speed of 2200 RPM. The Creta 1.5 claws back some ground with the fuel economy, beating both the Seltos and the outgoing Creta 1.6 with respectable numbers. Though they are still not in the same zone as the class benchmark, which was the Capture 1.5 diesel, which returned a staggering 18.5 kilometers overall in our previous tests, the Creta managed an overall 16.36 kilometers to a litre versus the Seltos' 14.9 kilometers to a litre. With the elongated wheelbase, the Hyundai engineers have also taken the opportunity to fine-tune the suspension, reduce the bouncy feel, reduce the rebound damping and all of that, and give both these cars, the Seltos and the new Creta, tauter handling dynamics. And it immediately shows. If you drive the cars back to back against the older Creta, you will immediately feel the difference. But between the new Creta and the Seltos feels slightly touter. It's got lesser nosedive under braking, and around the bends it also feels a little more sharper. Now again, learning from the Seltos experience, learning from what the consumers want, Hyundai have fine-tuned the Creta, like I mentioned, for the powertrain, and that's true even for the suspension. They made it to have a slightly plusher ride than the Seltos, and that shows. Now you will again have to drive the Seltos and the Creta back to back to understand the difference. The difference is marginal. The Seltos feels slightly firmer when you're going through potholes, whereas the Creta, it has that slight plushness, a slight softness to it, which I rather like. As mentioned before, the low-end shove of the new 1.5-litre engine has been retuned for smoother acceleration, which means that the wheel spin or the torque steer, which was common to the Creta 1.6 diesel, has been reduced by a fair margin. The case is similar with the Seltos too. Now, if you were to choose the top-end trims of the manual variants, you get traction control and vehicle stability management. If you were to choose the top-end trims of the automatic variants, the traction control also gets the allied function of the terrain system or the terrain select, which actually works quite well. We also showed it to you in the first drive of the Seltos that we did. So if you were to drive on mild dirt trails, or if you were to drive to your farmhouse and maybe there are no roads as such, it's gravelly trails or something, it works quite well. It's certainly not a replacement for all-wheel drive. It's certainly not as effective as all-wheel drive, but it's a nice system to have. Only available on the automatics though. The automatics also get you different drive modes to choose from, which is another additional aspect. It's a nice feature to have, not something that can really dictate which car you should go with, because these features are common to both the cars. But one thing I like about the new Creta is that a lot of you complained about a floaty feel at highway speeds with the previous Creta. That is now gone. With the new suspension setup, with the new electronics package, it feels a lot more stable. Same is the case with the Seltos. So whether you're driving in the city or cruising on the highway, these cars feel nice and stable. They are very confidence inspiring. So if this is an upgrade that you're making from a hatchback or something, you're not going to feel unnerving in any sense. The visibility is excellent, the stability is excellent, and the car handles just the way you expect it to. So whether it's driving in the city, cruising on the highway, or tackling bends, both these cars feel confident, easy to drive, and very refined than the entire competition. Time to sum it up then. So as the points add up on the points table, the Seltos edges ahead, though very marginally. Now, if you dissect everything that we've said through this review, you would know that there are plenty of variants to choose from for both the cars. There are some variants where the Seltos actually ends up undercutting the Creta, but that also means it loses out on a lot of features. All the headlining features of the Seltos are primarily available in the GT line, and that is a very expensive lineup of variants. So if you really need them, you will have to shell out a lot more money, and that is where the value game is going to swing either way. It's down to you. You will have to decide which variant or which car gives you better value for the money that you're going to invest in. If I was buying, I would go with the Creta. The cabin feels more appealing to me. For a diesel manual, it gives me better safety kit as well, and that is the variant of choice for me. It's not the 1.4, it's not the 1.5 petrol, it's the diesel manual for me, and that is why I would go with the Creta. The other thing that really needs a mention is the kind of sibling rivalry, if you were to call it that, what it has achieved in this particular segment. We have seen these two cars push the segment to its absolute limits within the boundaries set for it by the pricing, and that I think is something to take away from. We've seen sibling rivalry and platform sharing from other brands as well. Renault, Nissan, we have seen multiple attempts from them, but these two cars show how this can be done in a very nice way. And I think, yes, there is sibling rivalry, but this is a better example of positive parenting from Hyundai, and I think this will only push the segment to a new high. It will be now very interesting to see how the segment reacts to this, how the new competition reacts to it, but I think it's going to be a very tough game. So here we have the winner. Seltos is the winner, but you wouldn't go wrong choosing either one of these.
Well, if you're looking for some more detailed information, you have to download the June issue of the Overdrive magazine. The story is up there as well. You just have to head to the website and download your free copy now. Moving on to some auto news. Now, Mercedes-Benz at the start of this year had promised us 10 products, and post the lockdown, they have already launched 2 new products in the Indian market, the AMGs, and earlier this week they have launched the S-Class of SUVs. I'm talking about the 3rd generation GLS. It has been priced at 99.90 lakh rupees ex-showroom for both the petrol as well as the diesel variants. Now, there's a 450 petrol variant which comes with a 48-volt mild hybrid system and the 400D 4MATIC diesel motor. The SUV comes with a 13-speaker Burmester audio system, 12.3-inch touchscreen infotainment, 11 USB ports, panoramic sunroof, can save driver profiles, and has airmatic suspension, among other exhaustive features, making it a very luxurious offering. They don't call it the S-Class of SUVs for no reason. Big news also coming in from Chinese manufacturer Great Wall Motors. They've signed a memorandum of understanding with the Maharashtra government, pledging a $10 billion investment into India. GWM will be setting up a manufacturing plant in Talegaon, Maharashtra, and a research and development center in Bengaluru. Now, there have been plenty of discussions about looking beyond China to source auto components, and CNBC TV18 has also caught up with Maruti Suzuki's RC Bhargava as well as Bajaj Auto's Rajiv Bajaj to gain more insight into this matter. You can catch up with that information. We've discussed it at length at the Overdrive digital show earlier this week. Now, you can catch up with that on the Facebook page or the YouTube channel of Overdrive magazine, and you can also catch a glimpse of that show on the CNBC TV18 IGTV feed. On that note, it's time for us to take our final break here on the show. Coming up on the other side, we'll get you acquainted with the new Volkswagen Polo 1.0 TSI.